Dear Heavenly Father, thanks for bringing us here safely tonight. Please be in our hearts and be in our minds and help guide us to make the best decisions we can for the city of Boonville and its citizens.
Amen. Thank you, Whitney. Roll call.
Middle,
Here.
Dorman. Here. Stock.
Here.
Young.
Here.
Meadows. Here. Bozarth.
Here.
Hurt.
Here.
Carter.
Here.
Got a full house. Welcome, everybody. Hearing of citizens' comments. Anybody has a comment they'd like to make, they can stand up to the microphone, and they've got 5 minutes. Okay, nobody tonight. Any changes or corrections to the minutes of the January 22nd meeting? And they will stand as read. Thank you. No consent items tonight. Presentation of accounts and claims.
Ordinance appropriating money be it ordained by the council of the city of Boonville as follows. Section 1. For the purpose of paying salaries and various accounts against the city of Boonville, which have been allowed by the council at the regular meeting thereof on February 4th, 2019, the sum of $390,982.80. General Fund, $141,216.63. Sanitation, $30,657.38. CIP tax, $17,338.41. Waterworks, $121,512.79. Capital projects, $0.00. Wastewater, $28,577.16. Tourism, $5,102.33. Gaming, $33,588.76. Parks and Water, $12,989.34. Section 2. The accountant is hereby authorized and instructed to draw checks on the respective city bank accounts in favor of the persons whose salaries and accounts have been allowed as above, amounting to $390,982.80, being the total amount of money above appropriated. Section 3. This ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after its passage. First reading on February 4th, 2019, read for the second time this 4th day of 2019, since a copy was made available prior to the meeting.
Second reading, title only.
Ordinance appropriating money.
Mayor, make a motion to be approved.
Thank you, Morris. Second, Whitney. Thank you. Any comments, questions? Roll call.
Venable.
Yes.
Dorman.
Yes.
Stock.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Meadows.
Yes.
Bozarth.
Yes.
Hurt.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Okay, we have second readings to go through. Item A, second reading of bill number 2019-001, amending Chapter 2 of the Code of General Ordinances regarding residing requirements for advisory boards and committees.
An ordinance of the city of Boonville, Missouri, amending Chapter 2, Article 7, Section 2-227 and Section 2-230 of the Boonville Code of General Ordinances, providing an effective date therefore, and repealing all ordinances in conflict with this ordinance.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion to be approved.
Thank you, Morris. A second. Susan, thank you. Any comments, questions? Roll call.
Venable.
Yes.
Dorman.
Yes.
Stock.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Meadows.
Yes.
Bozarth.
Yes.
Hurt.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Thank you all. Item B, second reading of bill number 2019-002, amending Chapter 17 of the Code of General Ordinances regarding residing requirements for the Historic Preservation Advisory Commission.
An ordinance of the city of Boonville, Missouri, amending Chapter 17, Article 4, Section 17-53 of the Boonville Code of General Ordinances, providing an effective date therefore, and repealing all ordinances in conflict with this ordinance.
Is there a motion? Whitney?
I'll move this be approved.
Thank you. Second. Michael, thank you. Any questions or comments? Roll call.
Venable.
Yes.
Dorman.
Yes.
Stock.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Meadows.
Yes.
Bozarth.
Yes.
Hurt.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Passes. Item C, second reading of bill number 2019 amending Chapter 18 of the Code of General Ordinances regarding residing requirements for the Police Affairs Advisory Committee.
An ordinance of the City of Boonville, Missouri, amending Chapter 18, Section 18-2 of the Boonville Code of General Ordinances, providing an effective date therefore, and repealing all ordinances in conflict with this ordinance.
Is there a motion? Morris, thank you. Second? Brandt, thank you. Any questions or comments? Roll call.
Venable,
Yes.
Dorman,
Yes.
Stock,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Bozarth,
Yes.
Hurt,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Passes. Item D, second reading of bill number 2019-004, authorizing and approving a lease renewal agreement with Boonslick Heartland YMCA.
an ordinance of the City of Boonville, Missouri, authorizing and approving a lease renewal agreement by and between the City of Boonville and the Boonslick Heartland YMCA Incorporated for the purposes of operating a chartered YMCA and associated activities at the Johnson Fieldhouse, providing an effective date therefore, and repealing all ordinances in conflict with this ordinance.
Morris,
Make a motion to approve this.
okay. Whitney, second. Thank you. As a note, page 31. There was, that item at the bottom of the page was struck. And page 14, at the bottom of the page, on page 14, there was an item that was struck. We should note those. You've had plenty of time to read those, so you know what they are. Any other questions or comments? Morris?
Should the motion actually be that I make a motion to approve it with the changes that has been made within the lease?
That would be clear. I think that's correct. Do you accept that on your second?
Yes.
Okay. Motion second, easy for you to say. Motion and second as modified or accepted. Any other questions? Roll call.
Venable,
Yes.
Dorman,
Yes.
Stock,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Bozarth,
Yes.
Hurt,
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
There being no new business, we've got reports of standing committees. Tourism,
Most of this tourism was covered in the last council meeting, so that, they had made their recommendations for, distributing some money. So y'all got the minutes, if there's any questions.
I think on page 33, we ought to correct the typing error. Under number 5, Boonslick Area Tourism Commission. For some reason or other, we're asking for $35,000. And it probably should be 3,500. Correct?
Ours
Mine
says
is correct.
3,500.
Mine says
Yeah.
3,500.
Yours does, mine says,
There's an
Three
extra.
thousand, 5,000.
Yeah, there's the extra.
Oh, okay,
extra
there's an
zero.
extra zero
Commas
on the
in
end.
there.
okay,
See that?
okay, you're right. All right, which is it, 3,000 or 5,000, Kate? 3,500. Well, geez, I get to be right twice. What's up with that? Tell my kids that, will you? Or my grandkids particularly. Okay, any questions on the tourism report? Okay, Street Alley and Sanitation Board. Michael?
I believe that meeting was canceled.
I think you were correct. Reports of city officials. We're going to start with our city administrator, and we have another budget section to comprehend.
Okay. All right, tonight we're gonna do water and wastewater, two of our more substantive activities along with the general fund. So I think we'll start with water. You know, again, these are funds, independent set of accounts, self-balancing, and so forth. They both have revenue bonds outstanding, which carries a number of covenants and so forth with them. And we've worked hard with with frankly a lot of success, and took some pain along the way of trying to keep the rates up and get where we needed to go, because there's lots of challenges in both these worlds with advancing technology and then advancing regulation and unfunded mandates and so forth and so on. So we'll start with water. Water has had its share of challenges, probably not quite to the extent wastewater has. The number may be as many, but the total dollars are not as much. So we'll start with that one. On page 2, this is just kind of an overview so that you kind of see the bits and pieces of them and how it all adds up. Both funds as presented are balanced. They work off overwhelmingly off their user charge, either the water charge or the sewer user charge. And the only difference there is you see in the water fund, there's a transfer in from gaming, which represents a portion of a bond payment for the water tower that's by the hospital. And supposed to account for that, where the asset went to. But the part of the planning of that project was that gaming would pay for it. So we transfer enough in there to cover the payment that goes out of that fund in any particular year. So why don't we jump over to page 5? This is the revenues. Again, they're like I said, there's not very many. As you can see, the water revenue sales, the overwhelming amount of them. We had in both funds actually. In this context with water, remember last summer it was kind of dry for a while, so we did pretty well with water sales. We rejiggered how we did our rate increases to where we didn't have so much attrition with when we did an increase. And so we got where we wanted to be and probably a little bit ahead. Again, you don't know for sure you're going to collect that much this year, and I did hedge my projections a little bit based on that, because you get a wet year and it can easily knock 100,000 or more off your revenues. So and we're also in that fund have spent some of our money, so we don't have quite as much left in terms of earning some interest, and then that's kind of a challenge on how much you want to build that in, because it seems like in some contexts the interest rates have already topped out and are beginning to back up in terms of what you can get for a CD or something like that. So we don't have a lot of options what you can invest in. But anyway, as far as the large one goes down there, the water, you see I'm estimating 2.3, and I'm budgeting 2.364. If you do the math on that, that's a 2.8% increase. That's less than we've had in any number of years, and that same trend will be true in wastewater. The rest of the items are pretty stable. So we jump over to page 7. We've got their line items there. There's a 2% raise built in on all of these. That flows into some of the fringe benefits. We've already talked about health insurance, that went up some. Workman's comp may not go up this year, but it's loaded to go up. So basically I just left it where it was last year. So it ought to be good this year, and hopefully it's worth some measure next year also. And loggers went up a little bit for a full year of the change in plans. I think we only did that in June of last year, something like that. So it was kind of like a partial year thing. As far as the line items, for most of these, there's little or no change in these. I'll try to highlight some of them, but on this one I did want to draw to your attention is down toward the bottom is $31.35 administrative fees. We kind of charge a fee to both funds for administrative services for payroll, accounting, legal, administrative, whatever. And when we started doing that a number of years ago, I put the same amount in water and wastewater. And somewhere along the line, 5 or 6 years ago, wastewater, the challenge in wastewater got to be more than water, and we were having to raise it 2 or 3% more than water. So I kind of made them a little uneven and put more of the burden on water than I did on wastewater. And so in this budget, you see I've reduced that number in water. I'm kind of balancing them back out because wastewater has kind of come up for air and is not as in challenging of the shape as we'll see in a little while. So that number came off a little bit this year.
So I noticed that, so you changed, yeah.
Yeah.
You took it from there, but you
Yeah,
added it on page 16, so it's a wash.
Yeah, it goes up, so, yeah, it was a flip-flop, yep. So, water distribution, there are virtually no changes there at all. A few of the personnel items might look like they're up. Sometimes there's some turnover or in some cases, some people work out of class for a while and get their salaries get charged to some other place. So it looks less than it might be off on a normalized routine. So there's very little change on that. Again, your insurance is a pretty big one. We've already been through that before. Electricity and gas, all except one, and I think it was in the next page on the water plant. Some reason those numbers were up a little bit on the pumping, and it may be because I guess maybe processed a little more last summer, and there's a lot of pumping at the plant. But as far as the normal stuff with the other locations, it's electricity and natural gas isn't changed. And of course, if you go to the wastewater side, you have a dry summer. That helps them because there's less pumping at the lift station. So, the water plant on page 11. Again, that's obviously by contract, and I think in here there's Teresa, do we have the alliance letter,
No.
advance letter? You put that in there.
Was it in
I think there was one
the
in the back.
Alliance letter?
Alliance, yeah.
Back, usually. You sure it's not in here?
Oh, we got one in the regular packet.
Where's one?
Oh, it's in the regular?
Regular.
No, it's not that, that's not the one. I think we didn't get it in here.
No, I don't think it's in
But anyway, the long story short is their contract allows them to have a COLA. They send us a letter each year of doing the calculation on it, and this year it's an even 2%. And so if you look down at the other contractual services down there, you can see that's up, I think, 2%. So from 820 to 837 and change. Maintenance agreements are up some too. Primarily because of the mixers that we put in, that we've got, I think, 3 of them in now, and there's an ongoing charge to keep track of them. So, other than that, not much there. The next page on is revenue bonds. There's pretty constant. The last year's budget, it looks like it went up, but it didn't. Last year's budget's $591,000, but these are part of an SRF program, State Revolving Fund, and you do get a credit back on some of your interest. Unfortunately, it's hard to predict how much you're going to get in any particular year. So some of the numbers were a little better last year based on getting that credit. And we're getting closer to the end of the term on the bonds, so at that point the principal starts jumping quite a bit. So, and the interest starts going down a little. So that is, we haven't taken on any more debt or anything there. So if we look over on page 13, we're going to talk about some capital stuff. I'll do a couple of them here and then turn it over to some other folks. But I just want to make note of 4080. It says 37,150, and there's been some numbers in there before, but those were kind of one-off numbers, primarily with doing some work out at Hale Ridge and a couple of other projects, maybe even 2nd Street on it. But you recall we had a discussion a while back, and we wanted to try to be more aggressive on doing something with our distribution system in terms of main replacement, valve exercising, replacing, so forth and so on. That's a number that kind of was left when we got to taking the whole picture together, and it's not enough to do what you want to do, but it's a good start, a placeholder for what it's to do. So that's what that's for, is to try to start doing some main work, valve work internally. We don't have quite the the organization set in place to do it yet, but I wanted to get a start on that because I think it is a priority, and ideally, the number would probably be $100,000 in a year, and then hopefully if you had a little bit of labor that you could dedicate to it, that you could make a little show each year. The other one is the backhoe lease down toward the bottom, 7,100. That doesn't change anything. So with that, EML, I'll let you talk about the first four up at the top, and then Mark, I'll let you pick up the things that are at the bottom.
Technology, City Hall is taking the lead on wiring, I guess, city facilities with fiber optic and improving our general internet connectivity. And this little piece would be our share of it, and to connect our buildings and whatever's necessary there. We would also use that technology line item to support some of the next item, the meter reading equipment. That is our transition to a new automated meter reading system, or radio read meters. We had a significant start last year, and this that carries that forward. Hydrants and meters, kind of like Earl said, on improving our distribution system. This is an amount of money that we put in there so that we can replace aging fire hydrants. Roughly speaking, a fire hydrant is $1,800, $2,200 a piece, and then there's some labor, and there could be some miscellaneous valve charges, and then additional water meters out of that. Vehicles, I last year replaced one of our 1993, I think it is, vintage service trucks, and we're going to do the second one this year, and then we'll talk about another truck, a 1990s vintage truck, a little later, and that's what that is. And then water main improvements, that's what Earl addressed. We try to do or are working towards doing a little bit with our aging infrastructure.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We'll start with 4153. It's a rebuild of the river pump. We have 2 pumps down at the river, and it's just an ongoing maintenance issue every so often, every 5 years or so. We pull them and rebuild them. If you don't do that, we'll have bigger problems. So we try to get on that. So that's just a continuation of that maintenance process. 4156, the chemical cleanup and disposal. Throughout the years, we've had different polymers, different chemicals that have been used. They found out that they don't work, or something else better comes along. Well, we have some that are left over, and they just kind of get put by the wayside. So we're trying to clean up that, and it's not a very cheap process. There's only a couple of companies that really do that, and then you have to get all the data sheets together, and they like to charge quite a bit for that. The 4159, the UV bulbs, as you recall, when I first started here, we went ahead and put in the UV system, and those are just maintenance items that we go ahead and lamps and parts for those reactors, and then yearly we have a reference sensor that we have to send back up into Canada, get recalibrated, and comes back to us to keep us within compliance. And then we have 4170s mixers is the disinfection byproduct to help us with that. This year we're going to go with the Caterpillar tower. We already have it in the Crone Street, the water treatment plant, and the 1 million gallon reservoir. So we're going to go out further into the distribution system there, try to get some more out there. And then finally the 4172, the other, that's kind of a catch-all for us. We're still operating NPDES permit from 1996 is when it expired. That's not our fault. That's not the city's fault. that's on, DNR. We just keep on rolling over. Well, it's gonna finally get with us, so we put a little money in there because we know when it finally comes, we don't know when, but we're gonna have some preliminary engineering and stuff like that, that we're gonna have to have some money sitting there so we can respond to a letter or anything that gets sent to us.
And what is that?
NPPES, stands for the National Pollution, Elimination, or National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. So it's basically the mud that we return back to the river after we settle everything out. So we still have one, just like the wastewater plant has one. So, do you have any questions? No? Okay, well, thank you.
Okay, the other large item of capital nature that, we've talked about for a long time and frankly have had difficulty getting traction on is the water line going out to the Hale Ridge area. And, we're trying to acquire some easements as we speak, that's slow going. Those numbers aren't in this budget at this point in time, but we'll put them in when we do an amendment later on this year to try to pick up some other capital. Not so much in these two funds, but in some other places, so there's no danger we're gonna start construction on that in the meantime anyway, I think that's all I have on water. Again, you can go back to the page 2 and, look at the categories and see what it is, but it's so we could use another dry year so we can sell water. Okay. All right, anybody have any thoughts on water? So we're at 2.8, as I said. So let's move on to wastewater on page 14. This one, as I said, is kind of finally come up off the mat a little bit, as it kind of got was almost exhausted from the issues that continue to confront of it. But you can see this year, this one's overwhelmingly made up of the sewer user charge. There isn't any more ancillary things with it hardly. And we're gonna do, you can see there's 50,000 in there on the 2.5 to 2.550. That's 2%, I believe. So that's what I'm proposing this year for wastewater. That's dramatically less than we've done in a long time. I mean, we've been up over several years. So I think you combine the two, and that's as good as it's going to get. I think it's not going to be zero. So I think for this year we've got a little breathing space. I think so. Again, not a lot in the operating things. The administration, I don't have anything further to say on it. It's usually just a mirror image of the water side. We just split most of the bills. Wastewater collection, I would just note there's one item there. If you look down there, fairly dramatic increase, 2530, about 3/4 of the way down. This is lift station maintenance. And this is kind of it's hard to estimate, let me put it that way. You can see last year we spent 53. This year we're almost at 130 already, and we still got a couple of months to go. We've got a lot of lift stations. How many did she correct us to, Kate? 15. How many? 15 lift stations. Some of them are very large, as we'll talk about on some capital, and some of them are pretty small. But they all require some sort of, they're all mechanical. So I think the budget for the current year was 90, so you can see we're gonna be at least 40 over that. So again, given we've kind of gotten ourselves in better shape here, I just went ahead and funded that up so we don't have to sweat it out each year by going over. And if it comes in under, then we'll have something left to apply to a future capital project. So I did bump that one up quite significantly, and I hope that's enough. So it should be. Next page on wastewater. About the only thing of note there, I think, is about halfway down. Small chemicals, 2220, has been it's up. It's about $6,000 over the budget. Last year's budget was 109. Bernita gets quotes from the chemical suppliers, and that's what she had with that. Again, we occasionally have some turnover out there on terms of personnel costs, so that can skew that, or you hire a new person, they don't go on retirement for 6 months, so you got kind of a free ride there for a little while, so those sorts of things come and go. The sewerage plant, unlike the lift station, seems to be a little more predictable, and frankly, 1550 is not as much as you would think it ought to be, but there's probably some other things that catch some of it also along the way. So that's about all I have on those. That's the three main operating pieces. The thing I do want to spend a little bit of time on, at least today, to draw your attention to, and this is kind of a continuing saga, is on page 21. This is the debt service, and we've talked about the bonds. I alluded in the water. It's got, I think, maybe 2 years to go, late 2021 or something like that. A big bond out there expires. Well, this one, frankly, on the major bond, the last payment was made on January 15th of this year. So we don't have to put that in the budget next year. So you can see the numbers came down from well over 400, or at least last year, and to 100. Now, 100's going to stay there for a while because that's we had a USDA loan refinanced, and it goes into the 2030s, a few years. So that will stay there unless you decide to call it someday. So that money doesn't have to go back to here. So we want to see how we're going to track that, and we'll get there. I guess we might as well just take that up while I'm on there. We started this out last year with the category I call professional services, which is on page 22 at the top. And I kind of, for simple presentation, I kind of put it all in that category. You can see there's $400,000 budgeted this year. A lot more than we spent the last 2 years, and we're not going to spend $400,000 this year. But I just want you to see that lump money where it went. We will spend some money on professional services, primarily with MECO on the discharge line and some stuff they're still fooling around with the plant on. But it might be 50 or 60. And we're going to spend a little of it when we get to the jet here. But the thought is, if you're going forward conceptually, you don't want to get that money used up. You can spend it on a one-off thing in any particular year, but you don't want to chew into it on maintenance CapEx. It's going to have 100 every year out of there or something like that. Because one of the two things you need to do is, one, we're trying to save money for the discharge line extension that we hope goes to the river one of these days, but we can't quite get that off dead center either because the challenge is getting it over the railroad right away or under the railroad right away to the river. So I don't know what that project's kind of slipping. We're not under any great threats, but someday it's going to come to fruition. In our big plan, we had said we were going to pay cash for that project. And we thought it was about $2 million, so it'll probably be $3 million when we get there. But what's happened since then is we did the basin, the I&I basin this year, and that started out about $1.3 million, and then it was $1.5 million, and then it was $1.6 million, and then the bids came in 2.1. And that was supposed to be paid for, if you recall, from some money we borrowed from it was the Bank of Oklahoma, but a portion of that was coming out of there, and the other portion was coming out of the sales tax we voted, because part of that was for stormwater control, and this is ultimately stormwater. Well, both of those had limits on it, and they were more or less based on $1.5 million, and we spent over $2 million, so basically you had to take some out of this fund to pay for the bid that came in. So we had a pot started for the discharge line, but we had to use some of it up. Now, we still got plenty of time to rehabilitate ourselves, but it's predicated on keeping that $400,000, kind of keeping it back and saving it. And then the bigger picture we always had was, once that project's done, and if you have to do a major project at the plant, because that's what this money that paid for went for. It paid for the plant when it was built back around 98, 2000. If you have to do that again, you probably won't have to build a new one, but you could, you could spend $4 or $5 million pretty quickly on doing some things. Then you need the money to start paying back those bonds, otherwise you're gonna have to jack the rates up 30% or something like that. So if that time comes, then you can roll this back into debt service there and just use it strategically in the meantime. So the message there is we need to keep that without getting captured by some other ongoing use. I mean, it's okay to do it once, and I'm proposing we do it a little bit this year. So we'll look at that here in a little bit. ML, you're gonna talk about the rest of the capital in that item, or we're still on page 22?
I want to start by kind of jumping back to the chemical charges, a line item in wastewater, and I want to use that and one other item to point out how these functions are interrelated. The majority of those chemicals are used in some select lift stations to treat for the formation of hydrogen sulfide gas in the wet wells. Hydrogen sulfide gas causes erosion in concrete manholes and in portions of our collection system. That erosion is potential, and then we come over to the collection system for that infiltration and inflow, that I&I abatement. So we buy chemicals to lessen our hydrogen sulfide gas. Lessening hydrogen sulfide gas helps us control I&I. So I use that to point out how all these functions are interrelated. Capital projects, same thing, meter reading equipment. We don't actually meter, this question comes up regularly, we don't actually meter wastewater. We don't have a meter on your toilet. Wastewater charges are based on the data gathered by that water meter for figuring the consumption and the averaging for your wastewater charges. So wastewater function has an interest in the quality of those meters and the quality of the data that we get out of those meters. So consequently, they'll pay for a little bit of that meter. Lift station repair, we're continuing on with pump replacements at the lift stations. Remember a couple years ago, pumps, Cadillac, if you will, Gorman-Rupp pumps had changed and were no longer supported and sold out of the country. And we couldn't support pumps that the city of Boonville's been using for 25, 30 years. And then we systematically set out to replace some of the larger ones. This continues that with some 54 horsepower pumps at the larger lift stations. Backhoe lease, that's a portion of our backhoe. The wastewater treatment plant staff cuts a lot of their own grass, so they have that lawnmower in there. And then in situ form is the generic term that we apply to the cured in place pipe lining and manhole lining effort for our I&I, infiltration and inflow abatement.
Okay, so I want to put the capital in context for both of the funds. In the past, both of the funds had shouldered some of their own capital, and we had some capital coming out of gaming. Traditionally, some years ago, it was a heck of a lot. It was up $750,000 a year, and our needs aren't quite that dramatic anymore, but they're still there. But given the decline in some of the gaming monies, as you'll see at probably the next meeting, we've continued to try to got to move something out of there because you don't have as much. So we've trying to make some of the enterprise funds. You recall when we did the trash fund, there was enough money for about half its capital. So that came out of gaming and went over there. So the gaming didn't have to pick it up. So you kind of keep shuffling something out of there so you can still balance the gaming fund. So what we ended up doing this year is as the budget's presented to you, all of the capital is out of 17 for water and wastewater. So I hadn't really planned on doing that, but as the numbers on 17, that's gaming sunk in, that was the response that seemed to be appropriate. Now, we haven't finished up 17, and there's a chance we might squeeze one of these little pieces out of here, $25,000–$30,000. If it does, we might put that back in, but, I'll probably take it out of water and beef up that, main improvement line item a little bit or something, but for now, we've removed them there, and you'll see that when we get to the gaming number. So, I think the other item we'll talk about is the sewer jet. Emil, I guess you're on that again, page 23, and then I'll go back over the funding of that in a minute when he's done.
The last several pages, 30 pages, I guess, of your memo address a sewer or a combination jet vacuum truck. We currently have a 1993 Harbin sewer jet truck. It's used daily to jet sewer lines, primarily sanitary sewer lines. We also use it for storm drain. We have rebuilt the Harbin unit, the 93, several times, regularly added hoses to it, rebuilt the engine and pumps. We replaced the tank. It's showing its age. So I set out several years ago to try to find a replacement for that truck, and that was a difficult task, finding the piece of equipment that allowed us to grow our capabilities, but not be too big, too complicated for us. Some of these, and you've seen them in town for some of our contractors, are huge tandem, sometimes triple axle trucks. A lot of the dealerships are interested in selling me those. We just can't get those around alleys and up and down people's backyards. So I had to find that sweet spot truck, and that's where I came up with a truck that has about 5 cubic yards of capacity, about 1,500 gallons of water on board. I set out to do a combination sewer and vacuum truck, and that allowed us to wean ourselves off of contractors. We're still going to have to use contractors for large vacuuming jobs, but we're not going to need them for routine vacuuming jobs. What the vacuum piece of this equipment allows us to do is to vacuum out or evacuate flooded manholes. We're able to do hydro excavation when you get around fiber optic phone cables. You basically hit it with a high pressure water and then vacuum up that slurry. That's going to be a big benefit to us as you're seeing more and more fiber optic and phone cables moved around town. They're complicated pieces of machinery. It was difficult for me to come up with specs that addressed everything that we needed to do, so I approached several vendors on making a proposal to us, and this is where we landed with a international chassis and a Vactor brand vacuum jet body. Because this was going to be an expensive piece of equipment, I also explored purchasing options, and we came down on the Sourcewell, which used to be called the National Joint Powers Alliance. It's a cooperative purchasing organization that's managed by the state of Minnesota. The state of Missouri is a member of that, and the city of Boonville is a member of that. We've been a member of that for some time, and that allows us to buy this equipment from known vendors that we know. In the case of Shepherd's International, for a pre-negotiated price. And you can see, I guess it's a little bit later on in my equipment, I have got a comparative price that we are basically, I don't see it offhand, but $38 or so thousand less expensive than a comparable piece of equipment. $298, and then ours is coming in at $268. There's no trade-in value, I might mention, on our old one. I tried that, and they were cool. They didn't laugh at me, but they did take me aside and say, there's no trade-in value on your truck. Any questions on the vacuum?
What's gonna happen to the truck that,
Do what?
what's gonna happen to the truck then?
What could,
What's gonna happen to the truck then?
The old truck.
the old
The old
truck,
truck.
I don't know. We have recently put some money into it, so there's value in it. We may offer it for sale to some of the smaller communities. We have regularly gone on the road for other communities, Bunston Prairie Home, Blackwater. But then again, that could be a challenge, because to sell a truck like that, even one like our old one, to a community that has a part-time guy and think it's gonna work when he gets ready to use it, it's frankly better to call us, so I don't know what we'll do with it.
Looks very thorough.
Does that.
So we look back on page 4, down toward the bottom. I give you a little summary of how we decided to finance this. We've kind of taken advantage of, again, another one-off situation. I mean, we've done a lot of lease purchasing and the like in recent years, and preference is not to do that. And I didn't see a need to do that here. So here's the option. One is recall I told you one of the sets of bonds have paid off. Most bonds traditionally have something they call reserve accounts, and they can be for one of two purposes. One, you just have what's often just a formula of 1 year's worth of principal and interest. They make you borrow that when you borrow whatever you need. So if you needed $3 million and the annual debt service is $300,000, they make you borrow $3.3 million. And that $300,000 just sits in an account just in case you mess up and can't make your payments. So you got a year to get your act back together. You got one year to get your act together. That's a financial reserve. There's another one that's called a depreciation reserve, which, since these are all revenue bonds and they depend upon you creating some revenue out of some sort of an entity, a water plant or whatever, then you got to keep the water plant functioning, or else you won't be able to create any revenue. So they create a little reserve in case something breaks down, you can't get it fixed, so you can get it, go back and collect money. Well, that's what this one was. It was a depreciation reserve, just sat there for a number of years. The bond's paid off, so we have no obligation to keep it anymore. So we're going to take the $150,000 that was in there and apply it to this purchase. The total was around $270, I believe. And so the other $120 we'll take out of that $400 that we talked about earlier this year. So we'll just pay it off in cash when it's delivered here and have that one behind us. So ML, you want any comments on ML's been a little bit anxious on this purchase, I guess, you will. Any thoughts on delivery or so forth? I know you kind of wanted to get on with it. The budget's not going to pass until end of March, so.
Yeah, it's gonna be, if we were to order the truck here in the next couple weeks, it would be early June before we would have it. They're basically put together piece by piece. So International would order the chassis. Chassis would be delivered to Co-Equipment for mounting the vacuum jetter body. It would then be sent back to Jefferson City, Shepherd's International, for delivery to us, but the estimated would be early June.
And that price is still good. That's the bid that we've got. How long is it good for?
Well, he just here a week or so ago, so it's still
Okay.
good.
Okay.
So would it be in order maybe to put it on the agenda next meeting and go ahead and authorize it? We're not gonna have to pay it out until next budget year anyway. So, then it guards against anything that Mike's alluding to too. So,
Any objections? We'll have to remember that.
okay.
Thanks, Amy. I don't know. Anything else, Earl?
I think that's probably all I got on wastewater, if there are any other questions on wastewater. The only, the bigger project we have left out there was the sewer work out around the golf course, under our same obligation as the water was, except we're a lot further along on that. There's a big hole out there now, some of you have seen, we're trying to get that piece over to, the other side of Pierre, Lane, which will, finish our obligation on that, from the old annexation thing, so we're pretty close on that this year, so. To have that part done, so there'll be a little cost to that somewhere, but it's negligible at this point. So that's probably all I have.
Always put a new swimming pool in.
Pardon? That new swimming pool, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
in that thing.
The other one's making so much money.
Yeah,
Too.
we need to.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Earl?
No.
Okay. Report, we'll finish up the reports of city officials. Mayor, if you will take a look at page 43 in your council pack, council meeting package. For those that have been around a couple of days, we all know that Morris has acted as the chairman and instigator and motivator of the local agency funding for several years. It's not very often that we get a chance to get a thank you letter. And that's what it is. So I thought it was worthy to take note. And Morris, you should pat yourself on the back. You garnered a thank you. My item B is I'd once again like to re-up. Apparently, on Facebook here lately, there's been several people who are claiming that the school system paid for the soccer fields. Yeah. And for those of you, it is not I, but for those of you that are on Facebook, I would appreciate it if you would straighten these folks out. Now, there is a good chance that we won't straighten them out because they may be naysayers that are trying to fight the two taxes that the school will have on the April ballot. And those folks we can't help. They're just gonna use whatever they can find, even when it's a lie. But let's make sure that it's clear. Okay, city paid for the construction of the soccer complex. City clerk.
Okay. This is just for informational purposes. Ever since the city of Boonville moved to City Hall at 401 Main Street location back in 2012, the postings for all committee agendas or cancellations have been both posted on the bulletin board in the lobby of City Hall. This is the manner calculated to advise the public of matters to be considered. It was brought to Kate's and my attention that the City of Boonville's website on the calendar event section and the boards and commissions section was not up to date. Once we were notified of the discrepancy, we reviewed the calendar and found that it was up to date, but the boards and commissions page was not. On the events calendar page, we added some verbiage referencing that all committee agendas or cancellations are posted on the bulletin board at City Hall, 401 Main Street in Boonville. Also, the boards and commissions sections was updated with the correct meeting times and dates. I have also included that the committee agendas and cancellations are posted on the bulletin board at City Hall located at 401 Main Street, Boonville, Missouri. If there are any questions or concerns, we will be happy to take your call at City Hall at 660-882-2332. And then also, one other thing, I want to remind the council that the next regular council meeting is scheduled on Tuesday, February the 19th, due to the President's Day holiday on Monday, February the 18th. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you. Teresa, any questions for Teresa? Okay, make sure you note on your calendars, that's another Tuesday meeting, please. Any miscellaneous?
Question,
Morris?
food truck, do they have a business license? That was yesterday.
Slim Pickens. Who?
A food truck that's set up on the cell phone lock, selling wings and things.
I don't know.
Yes, it should have a business license in theory. And then also there would have been some requirements through Cooper County in terms of food inspections. But if they just show up on a Sunday or a Saturday, park their truck, it's a little bit tricky to enforce.
Bobby, should police department check and make sure they have a business license?
It's just not something that we're gonna think about every day, but if somebody lets us know, we sure will check them.
Well, I mean, they advertise this quite a bit in there.
Yeah, we can in the future, it's not an issue for us to go check them, if they got a license, if they don't, shut them down or whatever we want.
I think the license would be item number 2. Item number 1 is whether or not they've got county health approval.
Food handlers.
And I don't have any authority over that.
No, I didn't say that you did, but that would scare me more.
If they have a license or they don't have a license, if they have a license, we're gonna let them operate. Now, I don't know what Cooper County does, but they gotta have a city business license.
Yeah.
So that's not an issue for us to enforce.
I think the last time we had a food truck that came through from an out-of-town vendor was the donut truck that came through. And they did get a business license, and I think they worked something out with the county because they had, their food truck was inspected and approved in another county, so Cooper County took it or something. But this one, I don't know anything about it, so.
Thanks, Morris. Anything else? Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?